Someone sets a phone down on the table. The case is scratched. The screen has a faint crack near the corner. The battery percentage seems to fall every time you look at it. And when someone younger notices it, the reaction is almost automatic. You still use that thing? The owner picks it up, presses the button, and shrugs. It still works. They arrived in a car that is nearly 20 years old. They are wearing a jacket that appears in family photos from the early 2000s. Somewhere in their house, there is probably a drawer filled with cables for devices nobody remembers. To everyone else, the explanation seems obvious. They are cheap. They hate technology. They are stubborn. They are trapped in the past. But the strange thing is that they do not seem embarrassed. They are not apologizing for the old phone, the aging car, or the worn jacket. They seem almost proud of them. And that changes the question. When a Gen X adult refuses to replace something that still functions, are they simply holding on to the past? Or are they protecting a form of independence they do not want the modern world to take away? Because it still works is rarely just a statement about an object. Sometimes it is a philosophy. Modern consumer culture has quietly changed the meaning of value. For one person, value means having the newest version, the best camera, the fastest processor, the safest features, or the most convenient design. For another person, value means something completely different. It means durability, familiarity, reliability. It means that an object has survived long enough to earn trust. This is why two people can look at the same old phone and see opposite things. One sees inconvenience, the other sees proof. The phone still makes calls, it still sends messages, it still holds the contacts that matter. Maybe the camera is not impressive, maybe some apps no longer run smoothly, but it performs the tasks its owner actually asks of it. So from the owner's perspective, replacing it does not automatically feel like progress. It may feel like solving a problem that does not exist. And beneath that disagreement is a larger conflict between two definitions of progress. One definition says progress means constantly acquiring more capability. The other says progress means needing less than you are told to need. For many Gen X adults, this attitude may have been shaped by the world in which they learned what ownership meant. Not everyone had the same childhood, and no generation can be reduced to one story. But many people in this age group grew up around objects that were expected to last. A car was maintained, not casually replaced. A torn shirt was repaired. A television might stay in the living room for 15 years. A parent changed the oil, fixed a leaking faucet, opened an appliance to see what had gone wrong, or kept the same furniture through several stages of family life. In that environment, taking care of your possessions could become associated with responsibility. Waste was not just financial, it could feel moral. Throwing away something that still worked might suggest carelessness, impatience, or a lack of respect for the effort required to earn it. Then the world changed. Products became more sealed, more connected, and often less understandable. You could no longer open everything with a screwdriver. Software updates altered devices overnight. Features disappeared. Subscriptions replaced ownership. Repair became more expensive, more restricted, or less practical. A product you purchase could suddenly depend on a company continuing to support it. To someone who learned that ownership meant control, this new arrangement can feel deeply uncomfortable. You own the device, but you may not control how it changes. You own the car, but more of its systems require specialized equipment. You buy the software, but only through a recurring payment. You save your photographs, but they may live inside an account you access through a password you are repeatedly told to update. So keeping an older object may not simply be resistance to technology. It may be resistance to a new kind of dependence. The old phone is limited, but its limitations are known. The old car lacks modern features, but its owner understands its sounds, its habits, and its warning signs. The jacket may be faded, but it never asks for an update, a subscription, or a new set of terms and conditions. And when the world becomes more complicated, familiarity can begin to feel like freedom. This is where an old possession can become evidence of competence. Imagine someone who has driven the same car for 18 years. They know the slight vibration that appears at a certain speed. They know how the engine sounds on a cold morning. They know which repairs are urgent and which noises have been harmless for the past decade. They have records of oil changes, tire replacements, and maintenance work. They may know more about that specific car than a mechanic who sees it for 20 minutes. Every time something goes wrong and they solve it, the car gives them a psychological reward, not excitement. Mastery. Psychologists sometimes use the term self-efficacy to describe the belief that you can handle challenges and influence outcomes through your own actions. In everyday language, it is the feeling that says, I can figure this out. That feeling is not created by thinking positive thoughts. It is often built through repeated experiences of solving real problems. The battery dies and you replace it. A warning light appears and you investigate it. A seam tears and you repair it. The phone slows down and you find a way to keep it functional. Each small success reinforces the same message. I do not have to panic every time something stops working perfectly. I do not have to buy my way out of every inconvenience. I know how to take care of what I have. Over time, the object becomes connected to that belief. The old car is no longer just transportation. It is proof that maintenance matters. The old phone is no longer just a device. It is proof that the owner can resist pressure and decide what is enough. The worn jacket is no longer just clothing. It is proof that usefulness does not disappear when novelty does. This can explain why suggestions to replace the object sometimes feel strangely personal. The person recommending a new car may believe they are offering convenience, but the owner may hear something else. This thing you understand is no longer good enough. The way you have taken care of it does not matter. Your judgment about what you need cannot be trusted. No one may be saying those words directly, but psychological meaning does not depend only on what is spoken. It also depends on what the object represents, and sometimes the object represents the person's relationship with their own capability. This is also why a new object can feel less attractive, even when it is objectively more advanced. A new car may be safer, quieter, and more efficient. But at first, the owner does not know it. They do not recognize its sounds. They cannot predict its behavior. They may not understand every dashboard symbol or computerized system. For a period of time, they move from expert to beginner, and that shift can be more emotionally uncomfortable than it appears. People do not only become attached to objects, they become attached to the version of themselves that exists around those objects. With the old car, you are knowledgeable. With the old phone, you know where everything is. With the old jacket, you do not have to wonder whether it looks like you. It already feels like you. Replacing the object may temporarily remove that sense of competence. But competence is only one layer. Some possessions also hold personal history. Consider the jacket that has been hanging by the door for more than 20 years. Someone else sees worn fabric, an outdated cut, and a zipper that occasionally gets stuck. Its owner may see the first job they were proud to have. They may remember wearing it during late-night drives, school pickups, difficult winters, a cross-country move, or the period when their children were still young. The jacket was present during years that no longer exist. This does not mean the person is consciously thinking about those memories every time they put it on. Emotional attachment often works quietly. The object becomes a physical link between different versions of the self. You wore it before the promotion, before the divorce, before the diagnosis, before your parents grew old, before your children left home. The fabric is ordinary, but the continuity it provides is not. Human identity depends partly on the feeling that the person you were and the person you are still belong to the same story. Old possessions can help maintain that connection. They act like small anchors. A photograph shows you the past, but a familiar object lets you touch it. You can hold the same steering wheel, press the same buttons, put your hand in the same jacket pocket. For a moment, time feels less divided. This is why letting go of an old possession can produce an emotion that seems disproportionate to its practical value. You are not grieving the market price. You may be grieving access to a version of yourself. And because that feeling can be difficult to explain, it often appears in another form. Irritation. Someone says, you need to get rid of that. And the owner immediately becomes defensive. They list every practical reason for keeping it. It is paid off, it still runs, it fits, it does what I need. Those reasons may all be true, but they may not be the entire truth. Sometimes practicality becomes the language people use to protect feelings they do not know how to name. It is easier to say, this jacket is still perfectly good, than to say, I wore this during a part of my life I am not ready to feel completely separated from. It is easier to say, this car is reliable item than to say, I bought it when I first felt financially stable, and replacing it makes me think about how much time has passed. It is easier to say, I do not need a new phone, than to say, I am tired of feeling that the world changes faster than I can become comfortable inside it. That last feeling matters, because familiar objects do not only preserve memories, they can preserve control. A familiar object has known weaknesses. The old phone is slow, but you know exactly how slow. You know where the settings are. You know how to find your contacts. You know how to recover when something freezes. A new phone may offer better performance, but it also introduces decisions. Which model? Which storage size? Which plan? How do you transfer the photographs? Will the passwords work? Where did the messages go? Why is the charger different? What information is being collected? What happens if the cloud account locks you out? To someone comfortable with technology, these may feel like minor inconveniences. To someone already managing work, family, finances, health concerns, aging parents, or changing workplace, they can feel like unnecessary cognitive weight. The mind has limited attention. Every new system demands a little energy. Every unfamiliar interface requires small decisions. Every password, update, notification, and permission request adds another task to a life that may already feel crowded. Keeping the old object reduces that burden. It preserves predictability. And predictability can be emotionally regulating. When the outside world feels unstable, known limitations may feel safer than unfamiliar possibilities. This is not irrational. Most people prefer a problem they understand over a solution they do not trust. But here is where the meaning becomes more complicated. The same behavior can come from confidence or anxiety. One person keeps an old phone because they have consciously decided that new features would add nothing meaningful to their life. Another person keeps the same phone because the thought of transferring data creates so much stress that they avoid the decision year after year. From the outside, both people say the same thing. It still works. But psychologically, they may be doing something very different. One is exercising freedom from social pressure. The other may be using familiarity to protect themselves from uncertainty. The same is true of the aging car. One person keeps it because it is reliable, affordable, properly maintained, and aligned with their financial priorities. Another person keeps driving a vehicle that has become unsafe because replacing it would require asking for help, taking on a new payment, trusting a salesperson, or admitting that they no longer feel confident making a major decision. Again, the visible behavior is identical. The hidden function is not. The worn clothing can carry the same ambiguity. Someone may wear old clothes because they no longer need fashion to tell them who they are. That can be genuine confidence. But another person may hold on to the same wardrobe because buying new clothes would mean confronting changes in their body, age, lifestyle, or identity. The jacket does not only fit their shoulders, it fits an older self-image, and replacing it might force a question they would rather avoid. Who am I now? This is the central tension. Does the old object preserve independence, or does it protect the person from a transition they do not feel ready to face? Independence is deeply valued by many people who learned early that being capable meant not needing to be rescued. Maybe help was not always available. Maybe money was unpredictable. Maybe adults around them were overwhelmed. Maybe they were praised for being responsible, undemanding, or mature. Maybe they discovered that understanding how things worked gave them a sense of safety. Again, this is not true for everyone, but when self-reliance becomes central to identity, Accepting help can feel more threatening than the problem itself. A person may say, "I do not need anyone to show me how to use a new system." But beneath that sentence may be a fear of appearing incapable. They may refuse assistance not because they dislike people, but because dependence feels like danger. They may avoid replacing an object because the transition would place them in a temporary position of uncertainty. They would have to ask questions, admit confusion, trust another person, risk making the wrong choice. So the old object becomes a shield. As long as it remains functional, they can remain the person who knows what to do. This is where practicality can quietly become rigidity. A healthy preference can be reconsidered. A defensive rule cannot. There is nothing unhealthy about keeping a phone for many years. There is nothing inherently wise about buying a new one. The age of the object tells you almost nothing by itself. The more revealing question is what happens when circumstances change. Can the person replace the object when it begins limiting their safety, freedom, connection, or quality of life? Can they accept that a once useful strategy may no longer be useful? Can they change their mind without feeling that they have betrayed their identity? Imagine the car begins breaking down more often. Repairs become expensive. Reliability declines. Important trips are canceled. Family members worry about safety, but the owner continues repeating the same sentence. It still runs. At this point, the statement may no longer describe reality. It may defend a self-image. I am the kind of person who does not waste money. I am the kind of person who keeps things alive. I am the kind of person who does not fall for marketing. I am the kind of person who handles problems alone. These identities can be admirable, but any identity becomes restrictive when maintaining it matters more than responding honestly to life. The person may spend more money repairing the old car than replacing it would cost, yet still insist that replacement is wasteful. They may lose hours managing a failing phone, yet call a new device unnecessary. They may keep clothing they no longer wear because discarding it feels like discarding a chapter of themselves. At that point, they are not simply owning old possessions. The possessions are helping enforce a rule about who they are allowed to be. This is related to what people sometimes call sunk cost thinking. When you have invested time, money, effort, or emotion into something, letting go can feel like admitting that the investment was wasted. But replacing an object does not erase the value it provided. A car can have served you faithfully for 20 years and still reach the end of its useful life. A phone can have been the right choice for a decade and still become a limitation. A jacket can carry meaningful memories even after you stop wearing it. Ending the relationship does not invalidate the relationship, but emotionally that can be difficult to accept, especially when the object has become proof of endurance. Some people are not preserving the phone, the car, or the jacket. They are preserving a relationship with themselves. The self who repairs, the self who adapts, the self who avoids waste, the self who does not need the newest thing, the self who survives without asking for much. That identity may have protected them for years. It may have helped them through financial instability, rapid cultural change, family responsibilities, or periods when depending on others was not safe. But a strategy can be valuable in one period of life and restrictive in another. The question is not whether the strategy was wrong. The question is whether it still provides freedom. So when you look at an old possession, ask something more precise than, should I replace this? Ask, what am I actually preserving? Is it usefulness, money, simplicity, a memory, a feeling of competence, control, protection from a difficult decision, a connection to someone you used to be? There may be more than one answer, and you do not need to judge yourself for any of them. The goal is not to force yourself to let go. It is to understand what the object is doing for you. Sometimes the answer will confirm that keeping it is a conscious and intelligent choice. The phone meets your needs. The car is safe. The jacket is comfortable. You are not afraid of replacing them. You simply do not see a meaningful reason to do so. That is autonomy. You are deciding based on your values rather than social pressure. But sometimes the answer will reveal something else. You may realize that the object no longer serves you, but the identity attached to it still does. You may realize that replacing it feels like admitting age, change, uncertainty, or dependence. You may realize that what you call practicality is partly fear. That realization does not mean you have to throw anything away. It simply gives you back the choice. A small test can help. Imagine the object disappeared tonight, not destroyed in a tragedy, simply gone, with enough money available to replace it. What feeling appears first? Relief, annoyance, grief, panic, excitement? Would you miss the object's function or the version of yourself you become when using it? Would replacing it feel inconvenient or strangely threatening? The answer can reveal whether the attachment is expanding your autonomy or quietly narrowing it. Because freedom is not always buying the new thing, but freedom is not always keeping the old thing either. Freedom is being able to choose without needing the choice to protect your identity. So the next time someone places an old phone on the table, arrives in a 20-year-old car, or wears the jacket everyone recognizes from old family photographs, it may be worth resisting the easy joke. Maybe they are not behind. Maybe they have a different relationship with value. Maybe the object reminds them that they can maintain, understand, and preserve what others would quickly discard. Maybe it carries years of memory. Maybe it offers control in a world that increasingly asks people to depend on systems they cannot see or repair. And yes, maybe part of them is also afraid. Afraid of making the wrong choice. Afraid of becoming a beginner. Afraid of needing help. Afraid that letting go of the object will loosen their connection to the person they once were. Both things can be true. The possession can represent wisdom and fear, independence and protection, confidence and avoidance. The difference is not visible in the scratches, the mileage, or the faded fabric. It appears in the person's ability to reconsider. Maturity is not upgrading everything, and it is not keeping everything. It is knowing the difference between an object that still serves your life and an object you are using to avoid the fact that your life has changed. Sometimes an old possession is not evidence that someone is stuck in the past. It is evidence of what they learned to trust. The real question is whether that trust still gives them freedom or prevents them from moving when movement has become necessary. And the next time you hear someone calmly say, "It still works," listen closely. They may not only be talking about the object, they may be talking about themselves. If you recognize yourself or someone you love in this story, share what you have kept for years and why. And subscribe for more explorations of the hidden psychology behind everyday behavior.